I think that's the stream up and running now. Just gonna wait a minute to check if it's all working. Just gonna wait for a few people to log on to watch, and then we'll get started. So if no one knows what the purpose of the stream is, it's to go through the British Census survey I did. Hopefully it won't take too long, but who knows? I have 2 viewers at this point, that's good to see. Gonna wait a minute until see if anyone else comes on. How are you guys then, the 2 that have turned up so far? 3? We're up to 3. But am I sounding okay? Can you guys hear me on the mic? That sort of thing. Okay, cool, good to hear. In which case, let's get started. I've already 3 minutes past when it's meant to start, so we'll start now. So I've just put the actual survey up on the screen. Should be able to see it now. Just gonna wait to see if that's actually come up on the stream to make sure I haven't done anything stupid. Yep, that's up there now. Okay. So a surprising number of people actually went through the survey. I was expecting around at least like the most 70. We had a total of 81 people actually doing the survey, which is interesting to see. It's good to see that kind of level of participation in the community. Not everyone answered all the questions, which is fine. I'll bear that in mind as we go through, because if you look at the first one, not everyone answered the gender question, which I'll actually talk about when we get to it. Because I have a few things to say about that one. But yeah, we had a good kind of spread of people doing the quiz. Someone answered twice, I can see now. But the thing is, I'm not sure if they did, because he just put Alex, I'm unsure whether Alex answered twice, or if there were 2 people called Alex who answered the quiz. So, because it's such a common name that it's kind of difficult to differentiate. So I'm keeping them both there just because I can't quite tell. So maybe expect a little bit of leeway in the survey anyway, but a little bit more because of difficulties in identifying if anyone's done it twice, etc. So if we go to the gender and sexuality questions, these the first one I don't really have many issues with. As expected, most are male. We have a female, I believe. Yep, a female, which is it's better than I expected, to be honest. But couple non-binaries, a few others. I understand that there's a off chance that these people are just memeing. I hope they're not, because it kind of says a lot about the community itself if they are, but, you know, it's interesting to see, you know, that there may be a difference there. So you see more diversity than one would expect in this game. Moving to the sexuality question, we have a lot of preferring not to says. I had a number of people talk to me saying that the question was obtrusive, or intrusive, and shouldn't have been in there. I can understand that. I put the prefer not to say option because I thought people would be uncomfortable, but I then realised that I actually do have the ability to check the individual responses. I didn't before anyone goes there, because that's finished on privacy. I'm not going to do that. But yeah, this is RR. This is these are people in RR. This is the survey. So Jesus Christ. But yeah, people were a bit iffy about that, which I understand. So I have a feeling a number of people didn't want to be ousted and lied, or they prefer to say, which I'm totally fine with. I have no issue with that at all. Fair play to the people who did say they were this, that, or the other. It kind of shows a level of diversity that is good in my view. It's always nice to see that, you know, one type of demographic isn't playing the game. It's always nice to see a blend. So that's just me. In terms of levels, we can see that over 50% of the population are level 70 to 80, or at least the 70 to 80%, sorry, it's level 70s to 80s are active. So we have a number of active players who are at a decent level, and the majority, you can see that like the three highest kind of cluster around the 70 to 80 ballpark. The two closest are 80 to 90 and 60 to 70, and the rest kind of go down. A few 90 plus, and no one between level 30 and 40 actually answered the survey, which I found surprising. Either that they didn't get a copy because they weren't part of or weren't involved enough or active enough to do the survey, which I can also understand. So as a player base, we're fairly moderately leveled, so that's quite interesting to see. And it's good to see that there are more in the upper bracket of 80 to 90 than the lower bracket of 60 to 70. In terms of the country, the ratio of people in the country, I think this fairly accurately replicates the RR residencies. So we have the biggest chunk in the English Republic. And we have a kind of an equal spread. Sorry, I'm talking utter crap. I'm really tired. Sorry. The biggest the biggest number were in the Celtic Kingdom. I am literally blind. And then the two biggest after that are Northern Republic and England joint. Hi Adam, how you doing? So, and then the Welsh being the smallest, despite arguably being one of the most influential. I think that's quite an interesting stat to see, especially because the Welsh player base is all the player base are dedicated. But it's interesting to see that the Welsh have the smallest, at least who wants to answer the survey. So yeah, well, when we get down to the after the breakdowns of each specific nation, I believe we're going to see quite a major jump in terms of the Welsh players' stats. That's just me. In which case, I wouldn't expect the Celtic Kingdom one to be higher. In fact, all the people who did the Celtic survey did come back and do this survey as well. They're fairly good. The the Welsh didn't really come back and do it, probably got bored of the first survey I did for the Welsh. The Irish came back and did another one, which is good to see. I think that's because Q sent out a leader message, whereas Draco refused to. Draco wasn't really fond of this survey, which I can understand, because he's like, why would I invest in something that's pointless? And I was like, fair enough. But anyway, moving on past the breakdown of the specific countries people reside in. We have a much bigger spread of nationalities in Britain than I would have first expected. So, understandably, English is the biggest one, 30.9%. Next biggest is Irish, and then we have then we have the Welsh, and then we have Scottish. Then we see lots and lots. So I believe there are Americans. Yeah, there's Americans. We have right, hang on. I'm gonna go through quickly. Interesting, some people put Northern Irish, so that's the purple, the really light kind of purple between the darker blue and the lighter kind of aqua. I'd personally put them within the Irish demographic, just for the sake of the whole, I really messed that up in that regard, so... What do you mean by that, Mr. JB3? Interesting, Irish had the biggest population, but they're not an Irish. I don't know what you mean by the question. Or by the statement, sorry. I'll continue while I wait for the response, and I'll come back to that. But we have a number of Turks, we have a number of people from different states. I think there's an Egyptian in there. I think the Egyptian resides in Wales, but there's quite an interesting spread across the whole of. Ah, fair enough. In which case you're probably right. Anyway, I'm just reading the chat, it's kind of funny. So in terms of preferred systems, it was interesting to see a much bigger share wanting executive monarchy than I would have initially expected. I would have thought some of the people in the English Republic and the Celtic Kingdom would have dragged that figure to a much smaller ballpark. We still have around 22.2% wanting a presidential republic, though, and a next one wanted parliamentary republic. But it's interesting to see that not many want dictatorship and dominant party, one party. I think what that kind of shows is that no, it doesn't, Mr. JB. What we're going right now through is the overall British Isles thing. So I'll go down to the breakdown of Ireland later on. So yeah, if that's what you mean. But regardless of what I was saying just then, what that kind of shows to me is I'm a big fan of executive monarchy in the game. It is an efficient system, has a room for democracy. If the dictator is benign, and I think quite a lot of them are, Adam's constitution kind of looks is interesting. It's quite a good one for getting that balance between democracy and monarchy, which is kind of necessary considering the demographics of the British Isles. Lol. Who is the real Ben? I'm kind of thinking. But yeah, regardless, Celtic Kingdom will be the biggest country, but that doesn't indicate there are many foreigners there. Yeah, it's hypothesis. It's an interesting one. PM me with that. I'll look into it if Alfie Bennett. Alfie's joined the stream. Nice to see you, man. If you have any questions about any of this, do let me know. I'll be happy to answer any of them. But yeah, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions any of you have throughout the whole stream. So don't be shy. But anyway, moving on. The favourite system of government in real life. It is. We have quite a lot of these did. Oh, sorry, Henry VIII. Don't behead me, please. It's nice to see you. Nice to see you too, Adam. I believe William. I think it's Sir William. I'm not sure, but everyone who's watching, welcome. I just got shouted at for not giving Henry VIII a welcome. Eek. The thing is, I don't know. You could have been Alfie. That would have scared me. But anyway, so favourite system of government in real life. We have kind of about 75% want a kind of some of the more liberal forms of democracy. So without any kind of something like presidential democracy, parliamentary democracy, that kind of thing. And we have like some wanting a constitutional monarchy, which is what Britain has. I'm assuming that's what people thought by constitutional monarchy, so I'm counting that in the democratic kind of swing of things. I felt that'd be a lot bigger, based on the demographic we're talking about. But yeah, we have few advocating military dictatorship, fascist dictatorship, and I can't remember what the other one was. Yeah, autoritory. I don't know what that is. I don't think it's a word. They might have been. The fascist ones were probably jokes. But I don't know. I'm not gonna assume they were or were not jokes. People answered the thing, so whatever. But directly democratic localized communes was an interesting one. The closest thing I could think to that was social phalanxes, and that was a utopian socialist belief put forward by, I believe, Charles Fourier. Yeah, it must have been Charles Fourier. That's the closest thing I could think of off the top of my head to that, but I wasn't exactly sure what that specific person meant by directly democratic localized communes. If anyone wants to have any ideas about what that is, that would be nice to know, but that's the best I can think of is social phalanxes, which are where you basically have small localized communities inside a structure. So this was like an idea which was coming at the time of, colonizing the US. They thought, oh, we're going to have a new society over there. Didn't quite pan out that way. But anyway, moving on. This one got convoluted really fast because people went off of the options I put down there. Centrism I could understand. I was going to go through them very quickly. We have quite a lot of socialist kind of influence in the states overall. Henry VIII, you could join WMP if you wanted to. I'm not going to comment. Join WMP. But yeah, so we have a lot of like progressive liberals and stuff like that. We had nationalist capitalism, which one I want to talk about. So yeah, there's kind of a hotpox. Sorry, a hotpox? What the hell does that mean? Hodgepodge of different ideas about what exactly people meant. So if I go down, Red Irish Republicanism and Irish Republican. That is just. I'd regard that as liberal. I mean, not. It's liberal in regards to how it wants a democracy. I wouldn't call it liberal in the classic sense because it's kind of, you know, nationalist in some degree. But what that's the best I could attribute that to. Communism. I don't know whether that's a pun on Q or not. I don't know. We have two anarchists. Social nationalism. That one got me a bit peeved because social nationalism isn't itself an ideology. Social nationalism usually forms part of left-wing groups, so this is like far left. So communism, Karl Marx advocated social nationalism, so it was nationalism on the basis of social equality, and it usually formed quite a major part of left-wing regimes. So Stalin advocated social nationalism. Marx advocated social nationalism, Lenin did, like quite a lot of the Fidel Castro is quite a prominent example of this with his movement. So I'd regard that as within the communist kind of thing, that kind of bracket. It's kind of generalizing, but you know, there is no difference in Irish Republican and Irish Republicanism. I didn't put that. There was an option for other that I should have got rid of. And you could basically write down your own ideology, and so I don't know how to get rid of that. It was a bit irritating seeing all these ones that are exactly the same as the ones I put down, but you know, it's fine. And national capitalism, I would argue, comes under interwar fascist ideology, not in terms of you know, the social aspect, but it's kind of corporatist in many regards. So you have a capitalist economy, but it's organised by the state, and you have state departments who do stuff. So that's a corporatist kind of approach. I should have probably put that in there in hindsight, but you know, whatever. We have utopian socialists. I noticed a lot of people chose interwar fascism and Nazism. I think those were memes. I'm not sure. I'm going to assume not. But I saw a lot of people didn't choose fascism, and that's interesting to see. If anyone wants to know, I will explain why I put interwar fascism and Nazism as separate to each other, and those two also being separate to fascism as a broader thing, if anyone's interested. But otherwise, I'll continue, I think. Unless there's something else that surprised me. I can't remember what it was. Just hold on a sec. You've been a lot of libertarians. That's one thing I didn't quite expect. I've seen in recent years, in terms of my group of friends, there's been a rise in the number of people who have become classical liberals or libertarians, and that they are liberal to the extreme. So I myself am very much a progressive. I'm very much a social democrat, leaning towards democratic socialism, but I also consider myself very liberal on the social aspect of things. So I find it very strange to see the number of libertarians who are like, no state involvement in anything, and I'm like, bruh, that's mixed economy. What you doing? And it's like, nope, no state intervention at all. It's interesting to see. That's what I'm saying. There's been the youth vote is slowly kind of, I've noticed this in my groups, is slowly kind of turning from socialist left wing to like really gradual. I'm not saying that like the next 10 years everyone will be right wing. No, I'm saying that a small portion of the youth vote nowadays is Tory or like very libertarian. But I think that kind of bracket is growing. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. So anyway, moving on again. I asked all the people in general whether the British Isles wanted their own bloc. We got an overall number of people, not many people strongly agreeing, which is interesting to see. So quite a lot of people are like accepting of a new British bloc and would kind of want it, but not actively. 90.8% of all Brits kind of went, yes, we want it. So we have kind of an overarching kind of theme of, we want it, compared to we don't. But I think there's a lot of neutral people who are like, I'll go whatever. So yeah, 38.3% people being neutral towards the idea of a British Isles bloc. But bear in mind, I did this as the new NOS was basically being created and formed, so I think that may have also coloured some perspective. People were like, oh, what's the new NOS, what's going on, that sort of thing. Most people agreed that the NOS was a good move. No one strongly disagreed, only a few disagreed in general. Not as many people were neutral, so we had a strong kind of gravitation towards an opinion on this. You will see the real Ben. By the way I did the survey, we'll come to that later. Otherwise I'll be going up and down like a crazy person who looks stupid. So what I've done is I'm doing the British as a whole, and I'm going to break it down into individual states, if you understand what I'm saying. You'll see in a minute. So to the next one. This one was surprising. So the immediate security of my country is more important than any other states within the British Isles. There are a lot of people who agreed and strongly agreed. So I wanted to question this notion of Britain and like united Britain in terms of kind of a federal kind of thing, in the sense of we are not in the same nation, but we will help each other regardless. We don't want to leave them. I feel like the question was a bit leading. I didn't really make it very open, so one can make the argument that if this is in terms of like we should defend our own state rather than help another in the long term, honestly I'd agree with that statement rather than strongly agree, because it depends on the circumstance. But there is still a surprising number of I wouldn't agree even, I disagree with that statement. Ugh. But there's surprising people who are like, no, we defend our own state to the death rather than help another state and be able to help us out in the future. But hey, that's just me. Oh no, we're seeing some bigotry in class down in the chat down there. Oh dear. Big G's going off the chain. Anyway, so let's move on to the next one. Oh Jesus. That went wrong. Apologies for that. Here we go. Sorry about that, everyone. It kind of went a bit awry. So, Jesus Christ. This is what professionalism looks like. So, what I want to ask here was, there are a lot of meme wars in the British Isles. We saw one between the English and the Welsh, which the Welsh won, undisputably. And there's also a question of freedom of speech here, because there were questions raised about, do we have the right to annoy Sean, like that kind of thing, and like talk bad about Sean? And I'd argue 100% yes. Funny memes are memes, and even if they're negative, they're funny. Like, you can't stop people wanting to be funny. Only 7.4% strongly disagreed. A small number disagreeing, so we can see that there's more people gravitating towards the extreme than to the, that's on both sides. So we have more people gravitating to the extremes of the argument than picks. So like only 18.5% were neutral, which is it's surprising. I should a little bit more be neutral, because like I don't care, memes are memes, but clearly the motivating factor in the British democracy is memes. Like, you can't take our memes. You will never take our memes. But so yeah, it's mainly Most people agreed with that, which is encouraging to see. So next one down. This one was an interesting one. So lots and lots of people agreed that British Isles should supersede commitments elsewhere, which is, kind of encouraging to see, especially considering we're a fairly new cluster in terms of how we currently stand. By cluster, I mean cluster of nations, like around, whatever. It's kind of encouraging. Only a few strong disagreed, minority disagreed, but the most kind of overall agreed, which is nice to see, and it gives me a lot of confidence. This one is interesting to see as well. Sean did not have a good time with the performance of these state leaders. Most people regard him as good, followed by average, followed by excellent, but it's very close. He had the most people call him exceptionally poor, I believe. No, equal to Q. But Q kind of got cancelled out by them people who consider him excellent, so I guess that doesn't really count. So, we get an overarching sense here that Q's very popular. A lot of people regard him as excellent, that sort of thing. Draco's also quite good. Adam, unfortunately, is just considered decent, or not decent. He's considered good. I think what may colour that is his tenureship and how long he's been around. Because bear in mind, a lot of the other ones have been around a lot longer, have established themselves well, whereas Adam's still kind of getting on his feet in terms of ruling. So I think that should be taken into account when looking at these stats. And it's fair play, he's got a good relation. More people regard him as good as Sean at this rate. That's pretty good. That's a good sign for Adam in the future. So now we get on to the Republic of England section. So this is the breakdown for the Republic of England. You have an attack helicopter. You have a few attack helicopters in this section. I'm a bit miffed about, that doesn't correspond to the top one, but whatever. Sexuality wise, we have a lot of attack helicopter. I'm just going to ignore that. But we have most people again being male, that sort of thing. Level wise, you have most of them being 70 to 80, so fair play considering you guys are really new players in relation to the Welsh and the Scottish and the Irish. Yeah, so, and again it kind of gravitates around again, but in this time it kind of gravitates below the level 70 to 80 lines, but again, bear in mind, you guys are a fairly new nation in regard to existence in the game, so I'd expect that, to be honest. So yeah, level-wise you guys are doing pretty good. Nationality. It's a lot, oh my god, my brain is not working. Nationality. You have, I believe... Whoever put British, I hate you. It's not helpful. No, you have a Peruvian, which is interesting to see, Polish. And you have, English as well. So you've got less of a overall spread than most other states, but that's to be expected. To be fair, you are very much a nationalist, very much enclosed nationalist nation, and I think that will change over time. We get more people kind of immigrating in, so again, yeah. Moving on to the first system of government, here we can see that in terms of the English kind of state, only 43.8% support an executive monarchy, with the next largest being being advocates for parliamentary republic and presidential republic. And I believe that actually that statistic, let me just do mental maths quickly. Yeah, it's equal. I think it's no, it's not. Wait. Yes, it's about equal. in terms of people wanting a democracy compared to those wanting executive monarchy, and with only a few others advocating dictatorship and one-party state. God, I feel like an idiot, like just doing that mental maths there. My brain is like one of those old 80s computers that takes about 5 years to load anything. So yeah, that's interesting to see. I think after this constitution goes through and people experience what executive monarchy is actually like in the hands of those who are not being subjugated, because Adam won't subjugate compared to BG. BG are pretty notorious. So that I'm interested to see if that figure goes up in a few weeks' time or not, but we'll see. First is government in real life. We have most people in parliamentary democracy. Less people in presidential, so we can see kind of the British, the strong British core coming through. Lots more constitutional monarchy. There's the directly democratic localised communes again. Military dictatorship, no fascist dictatorship, authority. I think that's. I don't know what that is. I'm never gonna know what that is. We've got executive monarchy as well, so we're kind of nucleating around the British historical ideal, which is interesting to see, in terms of rival regions. No, I looked it up. I don't think it was. He's put the same thing twice. I looked it up, and if it was authority, then he would have put something else down that's authoritarian style of leadership. So he'd either put down military dictatorship, executive monarchy, or fascist dictatorship, in my mind. So I think he's trying to advocate something separate, but I don't know what it is. And I'm not gonna find out who it is, because I'm not gonna go through the responses and see sexualities and stuff, because that would be an infringement on like their privacy, and I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna keep the summary like this. So I'm not gonna pry really, unless the guy who put that's in the stream today. I can't really question it. So whatever. In terms of the political ideologies, this was interesting. Most people, the biggest proportions were, I believe, progressive and classical liberals. No, progressives and Thatcherites, which doesn't surprise me, because the Liberal Democrats are fairly popular in terms of vote share. They're nowhere near Labour Conservative, but they're more popular than you would expect based on how many of them are in Parliament. But then we it's nucleated around the kind of liberal kind of level, apart from we have some social democrats, more democratic socialists, a couple of One Nation conservatives, so it's kind of nothing too extreme. They're all very much kind of nucleated around the centre, excluding the neoconservatives, because neoconservatives are pretty edgy in terms of social stuff, but you know. We do have some anarchists though. Not so many that are politically aligned. And a few communists as well, so that's also interesting to generally see. So we have quite a broad spectrum of people in the English Republic. No one ideology particularly dominant over the other, which is encouraging and interesting to see, especially because I think it's quite a tolerant system in game. We have the majority of people in terms of the British Isles being their own bloc. The vast majority are neutral. It's interesting to see, but we have more people again agreeing than not agreeing. So there's this emphasis of either apathy or you can put you commies, of apathy or perhaps indifference towards bloc politics at this time, or perhaps not really being sure about a British bloc, because we don't know kind of what form that would take, which is reasonable. The question about the NOS block, we have the most agreeing with it, and strong, and then the next biggest kind of neutral. So it kind of nucleates around the agree overall in terms of public opinion. The neutral body should be taken into account because they kind of like whatever. The disagree is a minute kind of minute portion. And like people who strongly agree kind of factor in. So I'd say the English population as a whole are fairly fond of the new NOS block, but you should bear in mind quite a lot of people are still kind of undecided, unsure, or neutral on the issue, so it's something to bear in mind for future foreign policy kind of decisions. There's again a tendency to prefer one's own state and not act in a mutually beneficial way in terms of British Isles. I think that's going to be quite a recurring theme here. But I understand that completely in terms of protectionism. Again, I disagree with that, and I'm part of a minority, it appears. But if I have to, but that's probably me not being a state leader and being a bit of a moron. So we'll see. Most people agree with the statement. Again, some being neutral. It quite closely reflects the NOS kind of block stuff. I'm not sure if that's linked or not. I'll look into it. But this time we see less people agreeing and more people saying strongly disagree. I'm not sure if that correlates at all again, but interesting to see. So in terms of general importance of the state against the collective, it appears the state wins out in terms of international politics. You guys are very okay. Yeah, you guys are mostly almost entirely for the memes and most being neutral. That's quite surprising. In fact, most are neutral. So yeah, to be fair, yeah, actually, that's most people being for memes. So that's good to see. Not much to talk about there. Yep. Despite the previous statistics of our state above all, it appears that relations between the British Isles supersede commitments. That's something you guys generally agree on. There's no disagrees. It's mainly most people have an opinion. Over 75% have an opinion, being either strongly agree or agree. And 81% are neutral, so that's encouraging. Rating the performance of leaders. A lot of you dislike Sean Grey. I think that's probably because of what happened with the North East and North West and a number of other incidents. The Admirals actually coloured themselves in the best kind of light there. Like lots of considering Sean Grey, but Sean Grey is the only one that you guys considered exceptionally poor. And you guys are mainly quite fond of Adam. Highest number of excellence, second highest number of goods. Only a few rate him as poor. Most some rate him as average. So that's quite a good score overall from your own people, Adam. Well done. It appears that Q-Cufane is the most good, inverted commas. Are you guys generally fond of them? I think the lack of excellence either comes down to lack of experience of their presence, which is understandable in your nation, or perhaps a great amount of what's the word? Either cynicism or caution in regards to foreign dignitaries. So as you can see, yeah, quite a lot of people think Draco is poor. That's surprising. About the same number who think is Q. I'm not sure what to think of that. I don't know where that's come from. That'd be interesting to look into. I should have put a why would you rate these people, what they are underneath, etc. But I didn't do that. Lesson learned for next time. In terms of Adam's constitution, we have the main body being pro the Constitution, with only a real minority being violently opposed to opposed. So it seems Adam did a good job writing that, so fair play to him. And it looks like that's probably going to go ahead, I believe, unless there's been any... oh, by the way, I should probably say this now. Those of you watching didn't know, Q&A tonight. If I'm wrong, Q&A if you want to ask any questions about stuff. To Adam, it's on his Discord, I believe. So if you want to ask you questions, feel free. Then I believe it's at 8, isn't that right? I've corrected myself if I've done wrong, but I'm going to continue to the Northern Republic, irregardless. Let's get going. So we had 17 responses from the Northern Republic. We had most of them being male, one other. Sexuality-wise, we had interesting share of the you know, I don't know how to say it. I'm really tired. But yeah, it's interesting to see the diversity up north, pretty far north. So, yeah. In terms of levels, again, we're seeing a strong gravitation towards level 70 to 80 in the British Isles. Like a high proportion of them being 70 to 80. Higher tendency towards the upper band, it appears. And we have a few more 90 pluses in the other regions, so fair play to Northern Republic on that regard. Real life nationality has a higher spread than in the other nations, so we have some Welsh, mainly English up in NR, which is surprising. I've always considered it a Scottish party. I'm probably wrong. I probably triggered someone saying that, I'm sorry. But yeah, we have some Russians, we have some French, we have, I believe, an Egyptian? We have Bulgarian, whoops. We have Romanian, we have a Dutch, South African. So basically quite a wide spread of people up in Northern Republic at the moment. Interesting to see. You have a strong gravitation towards executive monarchy, a much smaller portion advocating democratic reform, which shows I'd say the success of the executive monarchy up in Scotland in terms of the overall population. I know there are a few very anti parties up in the Northern Republic, but it's interesting to see that it's a much smaller proportion. In terms of preferred system of government, we have a fascist dictatorship, someone's suggesting, constitutional monarchy, president republic, and parliamentary democracy, and one online. So it's interesting to see up in Scotland they're much less fond of monarchism, which is actually not that surprising. Based on demographics, though, I would argue that if it was mainly Scottish, I'd be 100% understanding. But bearing in mind that a number of them are English, I'm assuming that they're probably part of the Republican side of the Republican versus monarchy debate in the United Kingdom, even though it's fairly unpopular. So it's interesting to see that kind of opinion prevalent in the FSP and in the North in terms of the Scottish regions. So it's just interesting. Political ideology-wise, we have a neo-fascist, which is interesting to see. We have democratic socialists, predominantly, I believe, social democracy. Yep, mostly social democratic, which is interesting. The neo-fascist, not what I mean, but since it's actually there, the reason I put neo-fascist over anything else, because fascism I don't regard as its own, like, you can't really compare interwar fascism to modern fascism. So I personally come to the conclusion that fascism is simply a of the time coalition of let's say either unpopular, well not unpopular, but of extreme groups based on the issues at the time. So the reason interwar fascism came about is because of the humiliation of the losing powers of the war and the kind of it's a response to the decline in militarism in a lot of states. We have a general fear of mechanization in quite a lot of fascist ideology. Generally, and wanting to kind of an anti-capitalist attitude. So that's where that comes from. So nowadays, I regard fascism as being in response to current issues. So it's not necessarily one group who believe in all the different things, but it's a coalition of the groups that believe, that kind of come together due to the difficulties of the time, and of course that group will get bigger and bigger depending on how big the issues are that aren't being addressed. It happened again. I'm a moron. Don't know why that's happening. That's surprising. So basically, I regard that neo-fascist kind of person as probably somewhere along the alt-right spectrum. So either somewhere between the actual Nazis or the anti-identitarianists, I'd argue, but I'm not quite sure. Or the racists, or the actual racists in terms of white power, that kind of thing. But I don't know, didn't manage to probe that much further. It's a general trend towards liberal and social democratic things again, which I think is a sign of modernisation, in the sense that it's no longer black and white, there are meshes between ideologies that kind of work. But hey, that's just me. In terms of a British Isles bloc, 50% are neutral, even though FSP are usually the ones who advocate a British Isles bloc most strongly. The population as a whole seems fairly neutral. The biggest one is strongly agree, yes, but the fact that over 50% don't really care is interesting in my mind. In terms of NOS, a lot of people agree, a lot of people are neutral again. So in terms of maybe these neutral people, in terms of British Isles bloc, converted because it's NOS, that potentially maybe something to look into. Overall, FSP isn't exactly a very powerful player nowadays, so perhaps a bigger bloc is more desirable than a solely internal-looking British Isles bloc, but that's just me speculating. The immediate security question, we have more people. Again, we have more people agreeing and strongly agreeing than disagreeing, so that's something to gather from that. We have a much bigger group strongly disagreeing to memeage, which is, yeah, that's over 25% disagreeing with memes. Perhaps maybe because they've been on the receiving end of a lot of jokes recently, especially regarding the Dutch cock-up. But still, the overwhelming majority still want memes. So that's something we could definitely take pride in and be hopeful for. So it's good to see. Good to see. Sean Gray himself, I believe, didn't answer the survey, but if he did, I don't know where he'd sit. I'm not going to comment. the idea of the British Irish superseding commitments. FSP are very pro that, so 50% argue that that should be the case, with 33% being neutral, only 16.7% arguing that perhaps external relations should supersede the British Isles commitments in some cases. It appears difference between disagree and strong disagree is that, I believe. So strong disagree is in all cases, agree, or close to all cases, and disagree is, give or take. In terms of the rating of performance, Sean Gray is up through the roof. In terms of, I believe one person regards them as poor, or two. Let's check. You have one regards him as poor, one regards him as exceptionally poor. We have two regarding him as good, but the majority of the other ones are consider him excellent. I think that may be from the lack of opposition up in Northern Republic, perhaps due to Sean Gray being good at his job in general, or other things. Adams considered exceptionally poor. Maybe perhaps due to him being a new leader. Perhaps due to his reaction to the northwest crisis up there. Most regard him as average, but it kind of trickles down. So a lot more, less regard him as good. So, although some regard him as excellent. So take some solace in that. But on average, you appear to be above average in terms of your leadership, if we take it as an average of the responses. High King Kulane, he is considered mostly excellent. I'd personally, if did an average, he'd be in the lower field of the excellent bracket. In terms of NR opinion, that's because NR have traditionally had a fairly good relation with Celt. And the Irish in general, so I think that's probably played into it. But a strong number of people in NR regard him as average. Draco, I expected the poor to exceptionally poor to be a lot bigger, considering the pretty bad relationship between FSP and WMP. Although some regard him as excellent, on average he's considered good to, I'd say, lower bracket of good. By NR in general, so that's interesting to see. On to the Celtic Kingdom. We have 37 respondents. They've been the biggest respondents to this survey, and I thank the Irish for doing it. So we have a strong male player base with a few non-binaries. Sexuality-wise, we have a few homosexual, bisexuals, couple prefer not to says, 'tis to be expected. In terms of level, they are the only group not to have a predominantly in the 50s kind of level, 70 to 80 bracket, I believe. I probably contradicted myself earlier, but but then again we have I think that's probably due to the vast majority kind of shifting over to the 80 to 90 in recent months, recent weeks, months. So that's interesting to see. So perhaps they are ahead of most other people in the game, so that's good to see. We have quite a large number of 40s to 50s. I think that is in part due to the baby boom that happened in Ireland. And we have some 60 to 70 as well, so again nucleating around that 70 to 80 figure, but I think more in the upper band than the lower band of the 70 to 80 bracket. In terms of real life nationality, most are Irish. Yep, with even more, because if you take into account the Northern Irish, I'll regard them as separate for now, not to cause an incident, but we have some Americans, we have English who have migrated over there as well. We have a Frenchman, we have a Turk, and we have Italians, Moldovans, Polish. So yeah, interesting to see the number of people who've migrated over. I think what happened there is that I misjudged the colour scheme because they're really close, so actually it is mainly just Canadians, Polish, Moldovans, Italians, Northern Irish, Americans, and that last bracket I believe is that's the English bracket. I'm an idiot. I'm actually a moron. I do apologise. In terms of preferred system, after the really long debate in Ireland about the system, it appears that executive monarchies won out over democratic terms. It's fairly close to the answers I got for the survey I did a while ago in Ireland, so that isn't surprising in the slightest. So authoritarian leadership kind of wins out there because Q was very good at managing. Very good at managing. In terms of preferred systems for life, we have constitutional monarchy. I think that probably comes from the Northern Irish demographic within the Irish population in terms of real life residency, presidential democracy, and parliamentary democracy, kind of being the dominant ideologies there. We have executive monarchy being there, so it's interesting to see. We're seeing a general. We're seeing a generally democratic state again, which doesn't surprise me at all. I was expecting that anyway, but I wasn't expecting as many constitutional monarchists in the Irish regions. In terms of political ideology, we have social democracy again being on par with democratic socialism, so we have a socialist kind of player base in Ireland. Next we have the social nationalist as well, so that factors in. We have that libertarian play. I think Ireland is probably overall has the most ideologies in it as a single state. That's probably due to the massive increase in terms of people who did the survey. But it tends to nucleate around the socialist kind of field, apart from many who are just not really politically aligned, which is understandable. So moving on to the questions, the vast majority think that the British Isles are best within their own block, their own separate block, so that's interesting to see, considering the number of neutral people on that question in the previous states. Interesting to see quite a decisive attitude in terms of that question in Ireland. Again, a decisive kind of overwhelming yes in terms of the NOS block. Not many would argue contradictory to the previous one, but I don't agree, because it's for the moment NOS is a good move for predominantly the Irish, but perhaps some are arguing that later down the line it might be worth starting our own block. I'm not going to comment on that. I think NOS is a good idea personally, but whatever, only a few strongly disagreeing with the NOS block move. Again, interestingly, yep, again, still this emphasis on our country above your country kind of mentality, which is as popular as I imagined it would be, especially considering the number of wars we've had to fight to get foreign monarchies out of the state. So I believe perhaps a higher number of strongly agrees, because most of the other ones were predominantly agrees, so it seems that the Irish are much more, not necessarily extreme, but decisive and vocal about what they think about this specific issue. Good to see the memes are being encouraged. I know Ireland had their own meme wars between the IMP and Celt, which was good to see personally. I'm a big fan of memes. And the fact is the biggest portion being strongly agree is excellent. In terms of relations with British Isles, yep, it appears that more along the lines of, yes, we want to have that supersede. I feel like that opinion may be coloured by issues that arose out of the French invading Ireland. That may have made some Irish players a bit more cynical about international aid in terms of that sort of thing, but interesting to see. In terms of performance we can see that though NR are particularly fond of Celt and the Irish are generally more fond of Draco as a leader compared to Sean Gray, because we can see that there's more who regard Draco as excellent than they do Sean Gray, and there is a general gravitation towards average, between average and good for Sean Gray, perhaps more so average. Adam has been perceived well by the Irish. I say Adam's more so in the higher average bracket, so for a new ruler that's fairly decent, so fair play. Moving on to the best country, I mean the Welsh. We only had 7 responses from the Welsh. I think that's probably in part just the fact I had made them do a survey very recently, so it's very different to the survey I had here, but unfortunately it didn't really answer, so we're going to go off the responses we got. We have number saying prefer not to say, one playing bisexual in Wales, and the majority being heterosexual. It's a smaller number, I believe, due to lower level responses, so bear that in mind when comparing the percentages. Yeah, in terms of level, we have the predominant number being around 70 to 80. That figure is kind of dragged down by the number who are 50 to 60. So I know Draco's doing a pretty good job of pushing up the people to level 80. So we're slowly getting there. In that regard, I think we are one of the worst on average, based on the recipients in terms of level, but perhaps that may be due to the number of people who answered the thing, because I think there are a lot more level 70s who didn't respond than lower levels didn't respond. In terms of nationality, we have majority being Welsh, we have Scot, English, and I believe Egyptian. Yep, Egyptian. In terms of preferred system of government in rival regions, we have a very authoritarian opinion, so executive monarchy or dictatorship in terms of what should be regarded in terms of as the preferable system in RR. So due to Draco's decisive leadership, it's clear that many regard the authoritarian system for the Welsh to be the best system for the Welsh. In terms of preferred system in real life, again we have this people kind of nucleating around parliamentary democracy and constitutional monarchy, so the British kind of ideals, not as much a call for presidential republic or anything like that as in the other states, but again, small number of recipients might be what it's down to, and we have a few people who are not aligned in terms of their views on government systems in real life. In terms of ideology, we have an equal number of Social Democrats and Thatcherites. Nope, not particularly aligned. So, in that regard, people don't really care about real-life politics in the Welsh Party. I've talked to a number of them. Only a few really talk about real-life politics, which is fair enough. Real-life politics can be really boring. We have a few centrists. We have a centrist, I believe. Yep, and I believe we have let me check. Yeah, Thatcherites I prefer not to say. So, it very much nucleates around the liberal kind of side of things, not so much the authoritarian, right-wing, Toryite kind of wings. We nucleate around the liberal left wing, if anything, apart from the Thatcherite level for Thatcherite, that kind of shifts the average to liberal and a little conservative. So, yeah. But again, the number of responses kind of makes that difficult to gauge in terms of the actual population of Wales. The majority of people who answered disagree that the British Isles should have their own bloc, with only a few really agreeing and most being neutral. That surprises me personally. So I don't know where that's come from. I can't actually explain that statistic. That's very strange. Yeah, we have unanimous agreement about the NOS move. Again, people believing that immediate security of the Welsh state is more important. I think more people disagreed with that than other states. That's interesting to see. Because I think, like people can come back and say it was a team effort. Wales had quite a large role to play in the liberation of England, so that's probably where the kind of protectionist kind of thing comes from. Unanimous on memes. That's good to see. And of overwhelming acceptance that related to the British Isles should supersede commitments elsewhere. Of only, I believe, one person saying disagree. I think that comes from the protectionist kind of philosophy I mentioned in the previous one. I think WMP's a bit biased. Jesus. So yeah, people love Draco in Wales. Excellent leadership all the way through. Q's also pretty good to excellent. Adam, you're overall good to excellent, so fair play to you. And Sean Gray is the only one considered poor overall, so wonder where that came from. Anyway, that is the end of the survey. Any questions about anything that was in the survey? Any comments? Any criticism? Whatever, just throw it at me. Well, if not, that looks like that I should end the stream there. Thank you very much for coming and seeing the overall findings of the census. I hope it wasn't too boring for those who stayed. Have a very good evening, everyone. I will catch you guys on the next stream.